Hello and welcome. It is officially autumn and I am so excited. I love this time of year. So what I've done for this video is I've put together a list of my favorite autumn tarot and oracle decks, and I may be looking at the world with autumn colored glasses right now because I managed to find more decks with an autumn vibe than I expected. So this video may be a bit long, but what I will do is I will add timestamps below, so if you just want to jump ahead to different decks you can do that. The decks I've selected can obviously be used any time of year. Most of them I do use throughout the year, but they are also ones that have a bit of a seasonal vibe, or they have fall, like a fall color palette. These are decks that put me in the autumn mood, which is just another way to celebrate the season for me. However, in this video, I've decided not to include decks with a spooky Halloween vibe. Although I will probably be doing a separate video for those decks next week. And I think the way that I'm going to do this is split the decks up into categories, starting with mass market and then indie decks. And I will leave available purchase links below. Okay, so let's get started. The first deck of my mass market decks is the Tarot of the Hidden Realm. I love this deck. I use it year-round, but it does have an autumn feel to it. It's a nature-based deck. The deck depicts forest scenes, the Fae, our relationship with them. It does follow the Rider-Waite system, but it's different in the way that it presents itself. It doesn't clone or duplicate the scenes of the Rider-Waite Smith deck. You don't see a lot of the classic symbols that you typically see in other decks, but I love this deck so much. It works for me. I think this is probably one of my soul decks. Maybe because it isn't typical as far as the symbolism, maybe. I don't know. It makes it sort of like it slips past the conscious to my subconscious in a very unique way. You can just see, like, these are very, where's my, I think I went right past her, but the, like the Empress, look at her. She's amazing. The apples, the red hair, the green, the gold. This deck is very autumn. But when you look at especially the minor arcana, you don't see a lot of things like you don't see two wands here, right? You see these fairy, these little fairy children, and same with the Three of Wands. So again, you don't see a lot of that in here. Sometimes it shows up, but not very much. But again, this deck is very autumn-ish. This is probably one of those decks that when I first got it, it just surprised me because I just wasn't sure I was going to be able to read it. I do love decks that have Fae energy, but I didn't think that this one would read very well. It does read well, and I actually really like the book a lot. It has a lot. It has a lot of divinatory meanings, but it also has information and stories about the different characters in the deck. The other thing I like about this deck is just how up close and personal it feels. Very intimate to me. So yeah, so this is my first deck as far as decks with an autumn vibe. I mean, look at that. It would be Tarot of the Hidden Realm. Okay, the second deck on my list of the mass market decks has a very strong autumn vibe for me. This is Tarot of the Secret Forest. This is a very moody Fae deck. It reminds me of fairies and the Golding of the Leaves a lot, just because of the colors. The other thing is that the cards are unique in that they are reversible. So basically the backs of each card are the black and white version of the front image. Isn't that so cool? I love that. This deck has one of my favorite death cards in it. This one, I love this card. I love that it has the death head moth, or this fairy looks like it's disguised as the death head moth. It's just so beautiful. Look at that. So beautiful. I love the colors. The colors are a little subdued or muted, but it's a very beautiful deck. Like, I love this. Three of Wands. You see this fox. Anyway, that is the second of my mass market decks. Tarot of the Secret Forest. Okay, so I don't think I could do this video without including the Klimt Tarot. I cannot look at this deck without thinking of autumn. I mean, the colors, everything about this deck to me is very autumn. Most of the images, I think, are pulled from Klimt's Golden Phase artwork, which most people are familiar with. I think Los Scarabæus does a nice job with associating the images to tarot and collaging the different tarot symbols into the artwork. I know not everyone will agree with me on that, but I really do think this is a beautiful deck. It is one that I tend to take my time with when I do readings, though. I don't feel like this is a deck that likes to be rushed. There's just too much in it. There's too much to look at. And because I'm such a fan of his artwork, I don't really want to rush it, to be honest with you. This is a deck that, you know, if I wanted a really quick, sharp shooter, this probably wouldn't be it. This is just a deck that I like to meander over and look at and contemplate, and I really do enjoy the comparisons of the artwork in tarot with this deck. It's a beautiful deck. I like that a lot of the imagery is familiar to me, but presented in a different way, a new way through this deck. So yeah, so the Klimt Tarot definitely makes my autumn tarot list. Okay, another artist deck by Los Scarabæus is the Edmund Dulac Tarot. This deck has a dreamy autumn feel to it. Edmund Dulac is probably one of my favorite artists and illustrators. So I really love this deck. A lot of the images pull from different fairy tales that I'm familiar with. Some of them I kind of had to go looking for. I didn't really recognize everything that was in this deck. So I did go looking for it. I just wish that Los Scarabæus had included information about the artwork, because the little white book doesn't really do it. Look at this. It's so pretty. I love this hermit card. It just doesn't do it, and I definitely feel that this deck is worthy of a deck book set. This is not a quick reader like the Klimt deck. It doesn't like to be rushed at all. I think this is another one of those decks where there's just so much in it. I mean, look at the autumn, so beautiful, that you just want to take your time with it and savor the images. We've got Cinderella. A lot of autumn feeling cards. I love this Two of Cups. I kind of wish they had made this the Lover's card, but I'm glad that they included it. See, autumn. Okay, that is the Edmund Dulac Tarot. Okay, so the Deviant Moon Tarot has an autumn vibe to me, especially the wands. I love this deck. I use it throughout the year. This is definitely not a seasonal deck for me. But it depicts a lot of autumny, or autumn, is that a word? Autumny? Autumn imagery. The amount of like detail that he put into this deck is just crazy. Just the colors, like, that just feels very autumn. Okay, that's the Deviant Moon Tarot. Okay, so next up is the Golden Tarot by Cat Black. This is one of my favorite of all time decks. I used it professionally for years. You can see this one is much loved. I have used the heck out of this deck. A lot of the imagery in this deck is very autumn to me. I mean, almost the entire deck. I mean, all of this feels very autumn to me. This one is the first, I think this is the first printing. And so this one is actually matte, and it's like, I love this matte feeling. I actually have 3 copies of this deck. The second printing is glossy, and I didn't love it, but I used the heck out of it anyway. Mostly because it had gotten to the point where I was starting to glue, I wonder if I saw it the other day. I was starting to glue the pictures, or I was starting to glue the cards back together. They were just, this deck was just getting so worn out. I think that actually happened with the glossy version as well. But I also have the third printing by US Games, which is, it has a really nice linen finish, but mine showed up with misprints on it, so they're sending me another copy of it. I cannot wait. I think that's going to be the one that I'm going to use personally. I'm not going to use as a professional deck. You know, decks get worn out really fast when you use them professionally, which I know that's what they're there for, but what happens for me is once I start using decks professionally, I don't use them for personal decks. So I'm excited to just use the Golden Tarot for my own personal deck. I have other professional decks that I'm using right now, so it's completely fine. So yeah, this is the Golden Tarot, one of my top tarot decks of all time, and I am looking forward to using it again as just a personal deck. Another deck by Cat Black that has somewhat of an autumn feel is the Touchstone Tarot. I mean, look at the backs. I love the backs of this deck. Like the Golden Tarot, the Touchstone Tarot is digitally collaged, and the artwork, she collaged different artwork from European Renaissance and Baroque eras. What I love about this particular book compared to the Golden Tarot is that this book actually, it gives information about the different art that's in the card. So I really like that. I like to know who the artist is. I like to know who the model was, if they have that. And this book actually includes that information, which I really like, as well as, you know, adding the meanings of the cards in it. So I feel like this book is just packed full of information. And I mean, look at this. This just feels very autumn to me. There was a limited edition in 2008, which I don't have that copy. This is the 2009 edition. I think the name is Kunati. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I don't think they're in business anymore. And just recently, U.S. Games picked up this deck, and I think they've made different, like they've made changes to the cardstock. I'm not sure what the new cardstock is like. And I think the borders are different, and maybe the, like the title, the background of the titles are different. But I absolutely love the silky matte feeling of the cardstock of this particular edition. This is a beautiful deck. I love this moon card. It's one of my favorite moon cards. Look at that. She does such a great job with the collage in her decks. I mean, it almost doesn't look like collage at all, but she does a great job with it. Okay, that is the Touchstone Tarot. Okay, so this next one could easily fall into the Halloweenish category, because look at the backs. Kind of has with the colors and the bats, it feels kind of Halloween, right? But the Shadowland Tarot encompasses the entire season of autumn for me. This deck was created with ink and watercolor, these are my favorite art mediums, especially when they're used together. But yeah, like the apples. I just love this deck so much. It has a very autumn feel to it, not just Halloween. Look at this chariot, it's so cute. I love the clever imagery and fall colors of this deck. It's just wonderful. The cardstock has this wonderful, like, silky matte feel to it. I love shuffling this deck. I like the way it sounds when it shuffles. Actually, look at this tower. So cute. This reminds me of Cousin It. This Ace of Cups is adorable. Yep, you could add it to the Halloween list, but I had to include it as one of the autumn, just the autumn decks. The other thing that I really love about this deck is the book. The book is probably one of my favorite things about the deck, actually, because I just love what she did with it. I love how she added a quote. She has the title. So every page of this book is this really nice, glossy, colored, all the pages are colored images, and it just feels really good. And but she has the title. She has a little saying, I am the shadow of death and help others acknowledge the end of a cycle so that a new life can begin. And then she has information about the card, and she has keywords, the positive keywords, and maybe the shadow, which would be more of the keywords on a negative side of it. And then she has a message, and then she has information or meanings of the cards. She also has reflections. What old habits or patterns would I like to break? What is holding me back from a total transformation? How do I feel about death and dying? What is becoming or being birthed right now in my life? How do I feel about making major life changes? And she has this throughout the book, which is just so cool. So yeah, I love this deck, and I can't not include it in my list of autumn favorites. That's the Shadowland Tarot. And of course, the perfect combination deck for the Shadowland Tarot is the Shadowland Lenormand deck. Like the Shadowland Tarot, it pretty much screams autumn for me. Same backs. The cardstock feels different. I really wish they would have used the same silky cardstock that they did, the silky matte cardstock from the Shadowland Tarot. But this deck, actually, the cards have a glossy feel to them. They feel a little bit thicker, but yeah, but I still really like this deck. And I do like Lenormand decks. I love this star card. And a lot of the artwork is a little bit different, and that you don't see it in the tarot deck, but some of the characters are recognizable from the tarot deck. It's a fun Lenormand deck to use. So cute. I just like the way her mind works. Okay, that's the Shadowland Lenormand deck. Okay, the next two decks should be familiar to a lot of people. These are the Soul Cards 1 and 2. They are loaded with autumn colors. I love these decks. I use these decks for everything. I initially had gotten them just for inspiration. I just love the artwork and I love the colors, and I was mostly going to use them to help me get out of creative slumps, to help me get through blocks that I was feeling, and when I wasn't producing art or even writing. I use them for writing, but as it turns out, I ended up using these decks for everything. I use them for personal readings, I use them for meditation, I use them for journaling, and again, the colors just, they're very autumn to me. Very earthy, very autumn. I love them. I find the images so incredibly thought-provoking. I like that I don't have to think about anything, and yet they make me think about everything. Sometimes I just pick a card and write down what it makes me feel, and usually it's just so on point. I mean, again, very autumn to me. God, I love this so much. This is one of my favorites. This one. Okay, that's the Soul Cards 1 and 2. On to the last of the mass-produced Autumn E-decks. Okay, last deck on the mass market list, the Gulliver Rune Oracle. This is one of my favorite Rune decks, and the colors feel very autumn to me. This is actually the English version, which I love. I originally purchased the French version, but I ended up getting the English version for the book, which I'm really glad I did, because it has a lot of information. And I could have used one of the translation apps that I have to read the French book that I have that goes along with the French deck, but it just would have been too tedious. So, and I really am enjoying this, just being able to flip it open and read it without having to translate everything. And so my French deck I am going to give to a friend of mine who's actually French and speaks French and reads French, and so it makes sense that it should go to her, and she's just getting into runes. So I thought that would be a cool way for her and I to share information about the runes. But yeah, this deck is just so beautiful, and I do like the silky matte feel of this deck. The French one it's glossy, it feels different, and I actually prefer this one. It's a wonderful deck. I have several, and this is one of my favorites. And look at that, so beautiful. The colors of this deck are just beautiful. Okay, and that's the last of the mass-produced decks. On to my list of indie decks that make me think autumn. Okay, first on my list of autumnish indie decks is the Tarot of the Unknown. This is the pocket edition. I love this deck. It pulls from the animated series Over the Garden Wall, basically, which is that whole series is autumn. This is probably the most autumn deck that I have. And it's one of the few decks that I probably do reserve for this time of year. I usually watch the series once a year. I haven't watched it this year, but I will be watching it probably this week. And I love to play with this deck throughout the season. It's just so cute. I enjoy making like the tarot comparisons to the characters in the series because I think that he did a really great job. And it's just fun to do that. Just like with my art decks, I love doing that. It's just another way to think in tarot. It's just, this deck is too cute. The cups that show up, like the red plastic cups that show up, are because there's at one point in the series, there's a Halloween party. And so everyone has those red plastic or those red plastic cups for this Halloween party. So adorable. And as far as I know, this deck is still available on Etsy. And if it is, I will link it below. And if you haven't watched Over the Garden Wall, I highly recommend it. It's just the cutest thing. Okay, Tarot of the Unknown. Okay, so next on the list is the Magical Nature Tarot. This deck has an earthy autumn feel to it, in my opinion. It's a collage deck from watercolor. Like she painted watercolor images and then collaged them together using natural ink and natural dye. I just love the earthy feel of this deck. I love this Lover's card, so pretty. I read that the deck was actually printed with soy-based inks and then coated with a water-based varnish. And the cardstock is like I think she calls it eco herbage cardstock, herbage. And the deck feels like really light and airy and earthy. It just feels so good, but the colors just are warm and earthy, and just, I love this deck so much. Look at this world card. It's so, ugh. And the entire deck is made up of these colors. So it's hard for me not to see autumn when I look at it. Look at this. Like, you can see the collage. Wonderful. I love this Three of Cups. I love the whole deck, basically. I mean, it's just so unique. There's nothing out there like it, really. Okay, that's the Magical Nature Tarot. Next up, the Myths and Legends Tarot. The illustration, I love this deck. I love that the illustrations from this deck are from different myths and folklore from like around the world. I just love that. And it does feel a little dark. I guess it could technically be put in the Halloween category. The Emperor is the headless horseman in this deck, which I just love. But I feel like it's more than just a spooky Halloween deck. And it definitely has a dusky autumn feel to it, even if it is just a little bit on the dark side. It is also a lot of just autumn for me. The cardstock is this nice satiny or silky matte cardstock. It just feels really good, and the edging is just beautiful. It's like this sort of violet black color. It's beautiful. This double card is a succubus, and she reminds me of Lilith, actually, or different versions of Lilith. I love this moon card. The Mothman Judgment. The Besom for the Ace of Wands. I really like that. Look at that, Eight of Wands. Really is a wonderful deck. Hecate. That looks like Merlin, but I can't remember if that's who it is or not. Okay, that is the Myths and Legend Tarot. Okay, so both editions of the Serpent and the Peacock Tarot, the first edition and the art edition, feel like autumn to me, but especially the art edition. I always really like the first edition, but I absolutely love the art edition. It's just a beautiful deck, and I feel like in the art edition, I don't know, maybe because the colors are so much brighter, they just have like, I don't know, a brighter, warmer autumn feel to it. And yeah, I do absolutely love this deck. It's the deck I'm using the most right now, is the Serpent and the Peacock art edition. It's just a wonderful, antiquated, kind of quirky, antiquated tarot deck that has collaged together art from like old antiquated artwork, and it's just such a beautiful deck. Also, the cardstock of this, it just feels so smooth, and it's matte, which I love. And it's got this wonderful, it bounces back into place, but this is like my favorite deck to shuffle right now. But the entire deck has an autumn feel to it. And you know what, just to compare, I wasn't actually going to include this one because it's the art version that I'm using right now. But just to compare, you can see, let's see. I did a comparison video, just a silent comparison video of these decks. So you can see just how this has an autumn vibe to it, but more so in the art edition, right? Just because the colors just pop. So yeah. This deck, just, I get such good readings with this deck, like every time. And I am drawn to antiquated artwork. That's so weird. I don't know, that's so weird. Anyway, like, I just love this. The whole deck, I love everything about this deck. Everything. I think they did a great job. Again, I love both versions, but I probably have played more with this art version and just a short amount of time that I've had it. Compared to the first edition, and I've had that one a while. So I'm like, I really, look at that. I really love what they did with it. Okay, that is the Serpent and the Peacock Tarot. Okay, the Intuitive Tarot is probably one of my top decks. I use this deck all the time, like almost every day, actually. I love this deck so much. I love the warm, earthy colors, which absolutely make me think of autumn. But I just love how direct this deck reads. This deck never lies to me. So I think probably the decks that I'm using the most right now are the Serpent and the Peacock and the Intuitive Tarot. This is actually my second copy of this deck. This is a different, it looks a little bit different than the edition I have, but I actually prefer this edition because of it's borderless. I just like it. It's a wonderful deck. I mean, it just, to me, even though it's one that I use all the time, I mean, look at that. That's very autumny. I keep saying that word, autumny. Autumny is not a word. But I guess for this video it is. So yeah, it's very autumn-like to me. It has that very autumn vibe to me. She has another deck, the Shimmering Veil deck, which I think is beautiful. But it's the Intuitive Tarot that if I had to choose between them, I would have to choose the Intuitive Tarot. Not because it's more beautiful than the Shimmering Veil, it's just this deck. I get it. It gets me. It works. I mean, look at that. So I could not live without it. Okay, that's the Intuitive Tarot. Okay, another favorite deck of mine that has a kind of a subtle autumn vibe, in my opinion, is the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot. This was my primary professional deck up until COVID, so it is pretty worn. I'd really like to get a second copy, but this, yeah, this deck has, again, this very subtle autumn vibe to it for me. This is one of my favorite Chariot cards. But yeah, I love this deck so much. My next copy, I am going to use it just for personal use and not professional. Like I said before, using decks just for professional uses is, I have to have the separation between personal and professional decks for some reason. I don't know, it's just a thing. But also it just takes a toll on the deck. So usually I know that going in. So this one is actually retired, which means it is time to get another copy just for myself, I think. I love these pinnacles. Okay, and that is the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot. Okay, next up is the RainShadow Tarot. This is a newer deck for me. This is one of those decks that I wasn't sure how it was going to read. I don't actually have her Oracle decks. I don't have a lot of Oracle decks. I do have a few, but, you know, I mostly have Tarot. And it's kind of weird that I decided to get this deck. I was on the fence about it for a while. And then I went ahead and got it. And I am blown away. This is definitely a deck that surprised me, because I am blown away by how well this deck reads. I mean, I get amazing readings with this deck. And I think this deck has sort of a, I don't know, an autumn, kind of like a shady autumn forest vibe or something. Like, it just has that kind of feel. I think it could go into that category. Anyway, I think it's a beautiful deck. I like the way it reads. I'm really glad that I got it. And it just reminds me that you just look at this. I love this Devil card. You just never know. You never know. And I think with this deck, I kind of trusted this thing inside me that said, get it. Just get it. It logically, maybe it doesn't seem like it's going to make sense to you, but just get it. Like, look at that. And this deck, I think, is becoming one of my soul decks, because it literally feels like it speaks to my soul. It is an incredible deck. But yeah, a lot of the colors feel autumn to me. Just gorgeous. Okay, and that's the RainShadow Tarot. Okay, so the next is an Oracle deck. It is the Roots and Wings Oracle, and it has a lot of autumn imagery. This is a beautiful Oracle deck. And I was on the fence about getting it, just like the RainShadow Tarot, because I'd seen it and the images are beautiful, but I just wasn't sure that I would use it, and I do. But again, a lot of autumn scenery in this deck. This has that rose petal finish. I like the way it feels. I don't love the way it shuffles. Look at that, very autumny. Okay, autumny may not be a real word, but I think they should add it to the dictionary. They should make it a real word. And even the backs look autumn. Okay, that's the Roots and Wings Oracle. Okay, this next deck is actually part of the Green Glyphs collection. This is the Green Glyphs Runes deck, but there's also the Green Glyphs Tarot, the Green Glyphs Lenormand, and the Green Glyphs Oracle. But any of them or all of them have an autumn-like feel, but the one I'm working with a lot right now is the Runes deck of the collection, because I love the autumn, sort of this, like, it has this autumn, this muted autumn feeling to it that I really like. Like, again, this looks very autumn to me, these colors. I know I'm not going to include all of the green glyph cards here because there's really no point. They have the same backs, same colors. The only difference is that they have, each deck has different symbols associated with that particular deck. So this has rune symbols. The Lenormand deck has Lenormand symbols, and the Tarot deck has the has tarot symbols, which I think is just so cool. But yeah, that feels very autumn. I really love the color palette he chose. This deck was actually an afterthought, and I don't know why. Maybe because I was working with it so much, it didn't occur to me. But then I went, hold on. These are there's a lot of autumn colors in this deck. Okay, and that is the Green Glyphs Rune deck. Okay, so the next several decks are actually honorable mentions, and I was hesitant to mention them at all because they are out of print. However, they are still accessible. You can still get them. And one of them that is the one that you really can't get right now is actually supposed to be coming back into print this winter. And I will leave information about that deck at the end of that particular segment. But this one is the Artist's Inner Visions Tarot. It is a collaborative, like a collaborative collage deck. And it has a lot of autumn colors in it. I love this one. This is the Queen of Coins. Wheel of Fortune, Queen of Cups. I think this deck is just loaded with autumn colors. You look at that. This deck is so underrated, in my opinion. It's just, you know, it's weird. I'm always hesitant to purchase collaborative decks because my OCD brain doesn't always accept when there's a different art style throughout the deck. It just kind of messes with my head, or it doesn't feel cohesive. But this, I think this collage deck really works. And again, it has a lot of autumn cards in it, or a lot of autumn feeling cards in it. This is the Nine of Coins. I love this card. As far as this deck is technically out of print, but I have seen it show up on Amazon in the $40 range. So it's definitely attainable. And if you like collage decks and you like collaborative, I love the Six of Coins too. Collaborative decks, I think this is one that you might enjoy. She's beautiful. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because, like I said, sometimes collaborative decks, I won't even buy them. I like collage decks, but I'm even picky about collage decks. Some of them are just too much, and for some reason, this deck doesn't feel like it to me. It just works for me. I've had it forever. It's one of those decks that I won't ever sell. I just love it. I love this King of Coins. Okay, so that is the Artist's Inner Vision Tarot. Next honorable mention is the Incidental Tarot by Holly DeFount. This deck has a bright autumn feel to it. I guess it's the borders, the golds and the browns, but it just feels very autumn-like to me. I mean, look at that Empress. She's just beautiful. The backs have this burnt orange color that make me think of autumn. She also created the Curious Oracle, which is probably one of my favorite Oracle decks. It was the first Oracle deck that I ever really used on a regular basis. And the other thing about this deck is, on top of it's adorable, and I am so hoping that she will bring it back into print, is that the minor cards are very pippish. This does not bother me, but it might bother some people, which is why I'm mentioning it. But I love that this deck is pippish for some weird reason. The golden arrows replace wands and the element of fire. And she changed the names of the court cards are different. They're actually different in each suit. So you've got the messenger, the archer, the arrow queen, and the arrow king for the fire suit. And then you have you actually have the roses that replace the cups for the element of water. And they are pippish, but they do have different artwork on it. So it's just not just a repeat of the same thing. But in this, the court cards start with the Muse, the Bard, the Rose Queen, and the Rose King. And then the quills replace the swords for air. I love this suit. Look at that. Like, I mean, I love this. The Five of Quills. I mean, I think this deck is another one of those decks that I feel what is underrated, and I just hope she brings it back. And then you've got, for the page, you have the Oracle. For the knight, you have the Alchemist. And then you have the Quill Queen and the Quill King. And then my favorite suit is basically the oak place. It replaces Pentacles for Earth. And this suit definitely has an autumn vibe because of the acorns. So pretty. Like, look at this Five of Oaks. You can see they're broken. It's broken. Nine of Oaks. Ten of Oaks. I love that. Then you've got, for the page, you have, that represents the page, the Steward, the Builder, the Oak Queen. I love her. And the Oak King. So yeah, this is the Incidental Tarot, and I am hoping that she'll bring it back. Last I checked on her site, she hasn't printed any more editions of the Curious Oracle, but I'm hoping she will, because I know it's a favorite. I know she's had several reprints of that deck. I'm not really sure about the Incidental Tarot, but again, I hope that if more people have this deck and like it and talk about it, that maybe she will bring it back. So yeah, that is the Incidental Tarot. Okay, and next up is the Shakespearean Oracle / Tarot. They call it the Shakespearean Oracle, but really it's a 78 card tarot deck. The major arcana and the court cards are all characters from the Shakespearean plays. The minor cards are Pippish. This is very much a Pip deck. But they have like Shakespearean quotes from his different plays in the center of the cards. But it is mostly, I purchased this deck for the artwork of the major arcana and the court cards, because I just love it. Like that's the magician is Shakespeare. Elizabeth, who was a patron, Queen Elizabeth was a patron of the arts, especially the plays. She loved them. So they have her as the Empress. You have Henry VIII as the Emperor. So good. I love this. Romeo and Juliet for the lovers. King Henry for the Chariot. Portia for justice. Caliban for the Hermit. So cute. And the companion book kind of does it for me, because it gives you information. So for instance, the death card is King Lear. It gives you information. It gives you a quote from King Lear. It gives you information about the character and his role and how that pertains to tarot. So I really love this book a lot. It's one of my favorite things about this deck, and I find it inspiring, and it kind of feeds my nerdy Shakespearean loving heart. Puck, Cleopatra, the Three Witches, the Globe Theater, and then again, so for the Ace of Coins, it says, live rich and happy. And there's quotes for all of the minor arcana. And then the court cards are again characters from Shakespearean plays like Viola, Armando, Beatrice. To be honest with you, I'm bringing it up because the colors of this deck just say autumn to me, but I'm not sure they're going to bring this deck back. I hope they do, but I'm not sure if they will or not. But I had to bring it up because it just has too many autumn colors in it to be ignored. And you never know. The more we talk about decks, the more likely they are to bring it back. So the next one on the list is, drumroll please, the Efflorescent Tarot by Katie Rose Pipkin. This ink and water illustration deck makes me think of autumn. I cannot help it. It has a lot of autumn colors in it, even this card. I just love this deck. This deck is out of print. However, I just recently found out that it was going to be back in print this winter. This is a huge relief to me because after I got this deck, I said I wasn't going to do it, but I ended up trimming the borders off, and I didn't do a very good job. The trimmer that I used was dull. It was terrible, and I regretted doing it almost immediately. And so I went to purchase the deck again, and it was not available and has not been available since. So I had done a review on this deck, and people had reached out to me and asked me if I knew where they could obtain a copy, which I did not, because again, I was looking for a copy of my own. And then recently someone reached out to me again, and I decided to do a little more digging, and I looked up Katie Rose Pipkin. I couldn't find anything about her that was like anything recent. I mean, everything was pretty old, like from 2015, I think. And so then I guess because I kept looking it up, I noticed it in my Amazon feed. I saw a coloring book with the same images, 78 images of the Efflorescent Tarot, but it was listed under a different name. It was listed under the name Peony Archer. So I looked that name up and found that she had an Instagram, and I, clicked on that link and saw that she was actually going to release this deck this winter. So, woo, that's a huge relief. I am really excited about that. And I did let the last person that asked me about this deck know, because she was ready to ask, Peony Archer to commission a deck for her. Well, at that time, we thought her name was Katie Rose Pipkin. It was a little bit confusing. But anyway, she also has a Tumblr page. So if you want to follow her on Tumblr, you can. Or follow her on Instagram and just, find out when she's going to be doing pre-orders, if she's going to be doing pre-orders. I mean, does that not make you think about them? So that's exciting news, and I am happy to say out of the 4 honorable mentions, the Efflorescent Tarot is going to be back in print very soon, and I think we're all probably going to get in line for that one. So anyway, that is the last of all of the decks that give me an autumn type feeling about them. And if you're still with me, thank you so much. And I'm surprised, but again, thank you. And I appreciate you showing up and staying if you made it this far. And if you like this video, please like it and feel free to share and subscribe to my channel. That would be amazing. All right, thank you again, and bye.